All right. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope you're doing well here. We started a little bit late, but we are here and ready to talk about Yammer live events and producing those for Microsoft Teams and all the other cool stuff that you can do. If you're in the chat today, we're going to YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is new for us this month. And let us know in the chat where you're watching from, and I've got that over here on screen so we can keep an eye out for where you guys are coming from. Hey, Andy, how's it going?
Hey, John, doing well. How are you?
Doing good. A little bit sick, honestly. I'm kind of dealing with some sore throat, some congestion, things that sound like COVID. So we'll see.
We've actually been battling COVID here in my household for the last 2.5 weeks. My sons were exposed to it at school a few weeks back. One tested positive, and then my wife
Yeah.
caught it. I've been running around with a mask and doing cleaning and everything I can to avoid it. So, sending well wishes to you and your family. Hope that this is just a cold and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it's not COVID. We had exposure for my son and my daughter, and then a couple days later they said the school sent out something saying like, yeah, it's just so much that we're just not going to alert anybody anymore of COVID exposures. So they kind of gave up, and we're just like trying to wait it out. Like my son brought home a stomach bug, and then then that turned into like congestion and a fever and stuff like that. We tested him twice. He tested negative. We have one more test at home, and then the government tests, like the 4 tests, I just got an email that they're going to arrive today. So now we have one test per person in our household of 5 people. And I'm like, okay, do you use them now that we like kind of are sick, or because we're on the tail end of it, do we keep them, for next time? So
Yeah, finding tests has
that's the
been
challenge in the
really
US.
hard. Yeah, we've had some of
Yeah.
the same conversations around that, but we did go through. We went through the doctor and I got my son tested, and my wife did a
Hmm.
home test, and so it's been a challenging couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Well, we
hopefully we can
have
all get through it
so
together.
many people joining in from all over the world. As we're sitting here,
Yeah, this is awesome.
kind of getting settled in, man. We were everywhere: Kansas City,
Yeah.
Australia, Massachusetts, Knoxville, Tennessee. Where I
Let's
saw
see what time it
Germany
is in
on there, the
Brisbane.
UK.
It is 2 o'clock in the morning in Brisbane. So there's somebody watching at 2 o'clock in the morning. I really appreciate that. UK, a couple in the UK. Kansas City, Lee Summit, some of my friends from Cerner. There we go. There she is from Australia. Thank you for tuning in so early your time. Holy cow. That's amazing.
Is it Saturday there
We
already?
Yeah, Saturday morning already there. So happy Saturday. We connected on the Yammer customer community earlier this week, and she was talking about you know she's figuring out live events in Yammer. So this was a really timely thing. So I appreciate you staying up so late, hang out with us.
Yeah, definitely
Managed to
happy
wake up in
that
time.
all
So you
of
got a
you
little
are
bit of sleep.
joining in from all over the place. This is really cool to see, like, so many people worldwide joining in.
Yeah.
It really is a global community.
Yeah. I wonder if LinkedIn shows me how many people are watching currently. Looks like 23 people on LinkedIn and 6 on YouTube. So that is awesome. Hopefully you guys can hear all right and everything looks good to you. We're using Restream today. And yeah, it's working well. I really like about Restream that it has like this chat overlay, so you can
Yeah.
see all the comments coming in and all of that type of stuff. So um, that's awesome. Wow, getting ready for a blizzard in Massachusetts, man. Toronto, awesome. Hey, Steve Spa. I used to work with Steve. He was the architect on my team that did all of the architecting for the live events that we do at Cerner. So he was the enterprise events specific architect. So
Awesome.
good to
So when
see
we
you,
get stumped on a
Steve.
question, we've got a subject matter expert that we can turn to.
That's right. Yeah. Awesome. So, while people are kind of rolling in, we've got a little bit of an agenda today. Let me bring this over here on this other screen so I can see you. But we wanted to talk about all things Yammer live events today. And I wanted to start with a scenario setup. So Andy and I were kind of talking on the side, and he's got a real life scenario that he's, trying to solve for, and he's evaluating live events for. And it matches up with some of the stuff I've done over the past couple of years. So we wanted to dive into the benefits of Yammer Live, why you might want to choose Yammer live events versus Teams live events versus some other platform like we're doing LinkedIn and YouTube right now. And like why Yammer, what's special about the Yammer side of live events. And then move into before the event. How do we schedule the live event? What are the different options that we have? We'll talk about Teams encoding versus external encoding when it comes to Yammer. And just talk about like the flexibility that you have in both. We're going to demo both of those options, show you a little bit of what I've done in the past. Then we'll move into you have your great event, whether it's encoded in Teams or in Yammer or externally. And after your event, what do you have access to? We'll take a look at some insights from some of my real live events that I've hosted over the past few months. And we'll talk about cleaning up the recording. So all of your Yammer live events are recorded automatically. We'll talk about how you find that recording and how you can kind of clean it up a little bit and make it more available to your audience. Then we'll go into some limitations that I've found in the Yammer live event. It's not all rainbow and sunshines. There's some limitations to this platform, and we'll talk about what those are so that you don't get surprised by anything. And then we'll end it out with some stuff that's coming soon. And I want to show, stay for the end because I'm going to show how I do a fully Simu-Live live event on Yammer. So I've moved all of my teaching of Office 365 to what I call Simu-Live. And that's basically we pre-record the class, but we play it back live. And then in between the modules, we do live Q&A. So there's like a reason to show up. There's a reason to be there live, but I get a break during the actual teaching. I get to go check my email. I get to, make sure that it's consistent. I save my voice. But the benefit is people can ask questions and we can do live demos and talk about the latest, coolest stuff in 365. So
yeah, I'm
all right, with
really
that,
excited for this one to dive into it because I'm on probably like my fourth different version of trying to deliver
Mhm.
webinar and remote based training using the Microsoft stack. And I've used a lot of different technologies over the years. I've used WebEx, I've used GoTo, I've used Zoom, and a couple others in between. But for the last couple of years, it's been leaned really heavy on Microsoft Teams. And we've gone
Mhm.
through a couple of different scenarios, live events versus just meetings versus webinars. And now you showed something in our November deep dive where you were broadcasting internally to Cerner with
Yeah.
Yammer. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. So we started talking about how you were reaching across communities. You were breaking outside of the team silo and getting the Yammer community in there. And I thought that was really cool. And so I know we've been talking for the last few weeks about some of this. I've been doing testing and deep dives on my end and doing some research. And I know you've got some tips and tricks, and I found some things that people need to know. But I think as we're going through this, like some of the actual application, I think that's really important for us to share because like it's one thing to kind of read about it. It's another thing to get a little bit of hands on with it. But like once you start like really working on it, you start really figuring out the pros and cons. And I think hopefully we're going to be able to provide a little bit of guidance on like things that you should be aware of, some of what you can and can't do, and then help guide people in the right direction to be able to kind of pick and choose how they want to deliver this experience. But this one I'm really excited to
Mhm.
see because we are really bringing Yammer and Teams together, and it really is better together once you kind of understand all the inner workings of it.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive in then on what are some of the benefits of Yammer Live events? Why would we choose that over Microsoft Teams or another platform? So for me, the biggest benefit is just being able to corral the people together, right? It's the idea that you're live streaming to where your community already is, and that would be a reason why you'd want to use Yammer versus something else. But also a reason why you may not want to use Yammer is if you don't have an already established community. I don't think I would necessarily recommend that you establish a community specifically to do a live stream. It should be part of your overall community management strategy, right? You're providing value in a lot of other ways, and you have reasons for people to go to that community. Adding a live event on top of that just kind of adds some icing to that community cake that you've already spent a ton of time putting together. Um, but that's why we shifted to Yammer live events for our Office 365 training. Is our group called Office 365 at Cerner has about 3,800 people in it. And because they're already there getting their questions answered, that's the perfect place for me to share what's new and next, share training classes, things like that. Because like I already have kind of a captive audience, and I'm just alerting them that we've gone live now, and we have really good viewership as a result.
Yeah, I was really impressed with some of the statistics and the numbers that you were showing me. The engagement, the number of people that you were able to reach across this particular method, and that's really what got the wheels turning for me on this. And
Hmm.
so I'm excited to be able to dive in a little bit deeper and hopefully share some of these learnings, because I mean, it really is in
Hmm.
this case you are adding to that community and the effort that you've already cultivated, but you're doing it in an intelligent way so that you're scaling your resources. And that's really what it's about. Like when we deliver this
Hmm.
type of training and information, a lot of times we are scaling our resource, which is us and the content that we curate, and we're trying to reach a very large audience. But when you build a community like in the Yammer world, that's a community that grows over time. It changes, it evolves, but it grows
Hmm.
over time. And this is just adding that value to it. So it's really cool to see. But the when you showed the statistics to me and we started kind of drilling through that, that's when like the light really started going off. It's like, okay, I need to
Yeah.
figure out some way to implement this into my workflow to be able to do a little bit more.
Hmm. Yeah, out of that community of about 3,500 people, we regularly have between 400 and 500 viewers on all of my live streams that I do. And typically, we'll do a live event in Office 365 at Cerner. We'll do about 2 to 3 per month. Like I do what's new and next, and then I do a class or two per month. There's a really good question here in the chat from Pete. There was, would you default to the all company community if you don't already have that? And I think I would if you're talking like a town hall or something like that. If it's generic enough that it's not specific to a specific region or a specific department or a specific like subject. Like mine is Office 365 technology, so I feel like it's a little bit too narrow to be all company for my stuff personally. But yeah, like if we're gonna put together a CEO town hall and we want to have a wide open Q&A, something like that, all company is definitely the appropriate place to consider for that. I think it just kind of depends on like what the topic is. So
In my case, we have some governance and limitations in place with what goes in all company versus like what we can do in smaller communities. My one major association, we have 50,000 people involved in our
mhm,
Yammer all company, and we have rules in place about mass communications. And so we would actually have
yeah.
to run it through smaller communities and guide it through there. We have communities specifically for Microsoft technologies, such as a Teams community, a Yammer community, Office
Hmm.
365 community, a SharePoint. We would broadcast through one of those smaller communities because those are people that are more into and uh, associated with that technology versus the all company. So we have
Hmm.
that limitation where I work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the same with me. Another benefit that I kind of mentioned a little bit is the fact that you have that Q&A built into Yammer. But better than like what you can do in Teams or what you can do in some other platforms, in my opinion, I really like that it's a persistent Q&A. So what's unique about Yammer is that if somebody watches on demand, when we're talking about global companies here, I might do a live stream that works well for people in the US, but somebody in New Zealand or somebody in India, they might be watching it, 12 hours later or 18 hours later. So what I found is that Yammer is a little bit more of a welcoming community for that specific Q&A, because it will show this in a minute whenever we do the demo. But that page that gets created that kind of rolls up the Q&A underneath the video, that is available whether you're watching it live or you're watching it on demand. So what I usually do is I'll post like a thanks for watching announcement and kind of pin that. And then that's where people can go watch it on demand, but they can ask a question even though we're not currently live. And because I'm a manager of that community, I get a notification that there's a new mention inside of that event, and I can answer that question whenever I wake up the next morning. So you're able to kind of time shift your efforts, and it's not like a Teams live event where whenever it's over, yeah, you can watch it on demand, but you can't ask a question. It's not quite as interactive as having that persistent Q&A. So I really like that about it.
And in addition to the Q&A, it fosters discussion. So, like, you can watch the video and then have conversation about that all in the same place. So it minimizes some of the
Hmm.
friction between switching between different channels. Like, I watched it in stream, now I'll go over to this Teams channel and I start asking questions over here. It brings everything into one central location and really
Hmm.
does minimize that friction of switching. And like you're saying, it keeps the Q&A going and it adds value to it over time. And as people ask questions, you've got the features like Mark Best Reply, so you can authoritatively
Hmm.
answer some of those, but you also get the discussion piece that the community has, and you can keep fostering discussion around that particular topic. So it adds a lot of value ongoing, and that was something that was really eye opening whenever you started showing some of this, because we have not
Hmm.
explored Yammer for that particular scenario prior to seeing some of what you were doing, because we were all on the team side of it, and we do use Yammer. And after seeing what you showed back in November, I spent a good bit of time going back and researching it. And it's like, it was
Hmm.
like, why didn't I see this before? Why didn't I, it was right there and it was evident. We have all these great benefits in Yammer and we have all these great things in Teams, and you really put it all together. And that was the eye opening
Hmm.
moment for me.
Yeah. So I think that kind of boils down like over the overall benefits to me are kind of five that I've identified specifically. It exists in existing communities. It's persistent Q&A. It's immediately available on demand. As Andy mentioned, you can mark a best answer, and we have various reactions. So you can do more than just liking a question. You can also do a heart or a sad face or celebration. There's a little bit more expression in Yammer. And I think those five reasons kind of lean me towards the Yammer live event side of things, especially if I have an existing community.
Right. I don't know if there's a question that just popped up
Hmm.
around navigating away from Yammer, the lack of moderation, inappropriate comments, questions, and things like that. So we'll talk about some of the ways that we handle that as we're moving through some of our
Hmm.
demos a little bit later, and some of our best practices around that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put that on screen here real quick. Go ahead and send your questions in the chat. I am starring those questions. So Patrick, I see you on LinkedIn. I'm flagging those questions because we've got like a specific section about it a little bit later. So yes, we will talk about teams versus external encoding here in a couple of minutes. I'm scrolling through here just seeing a few other comments. Yeah, it's an attractive benefit that the Q&A stays around. Yes, Patrick, this is a good point. So the Q&A app inside of Teams, that is available. It's in public preview. Um, I have tested it out. it's in this interesting preview state where it actually is available to everybody, even in Ring 4. So you don't have to be in private or public preview, which is like Ring 3.9. Um, so even if you're not in public preview, you can at least test this app out in like a kind of a preview mode. Um, sorry, my throat. But I have tested it out extensively. I've actually was one of the first tap testers whenever we started talking about this. So I've been able to have some input into the design and kind of how I hope things will work. And it is very Yammery. It's powered by Yammer technically, even though those questions in Teams Live events don't go to a specific community. So they're not persistent, but you do get the benefits of like being able to mark a best answer, being able to have more than just a like reaction. You can have an array. I think there's 6 different reactions that you can have. So it's a step towards that. But again, because the framework is there's not a community after the event, the Q&A isn't persistent, but it's definitely more interactive than what we had previously. Yeah. So as John said, like the interactivity is really nice. Let's see here. Just looking at a couple more questions here or comments. Steve Wynn, who's actually on the product group for Yammer. So I've worked with Steve for many years, and he's watching on YouTube today. So I've talked to some customers that are worried about opening up live events for their employees for the fear that they might run too many and overwhelm the network. What are your thoughts on that? We have that concern too. We did turn on live events for everybody at Cerner. So I'm sure, Andy, you might have a little bit more governance or a little bit more, reasons for making different decisions. But we, as a technology company, we've kind of decided early on that we didn't want to stifle innovation. We're all about like enabling is kind of the mantra. So we do a little bit, controversial things like everybody at Cerner, all 25,000 plus people, everybody can create a team or a Yammer community. They don't have to ask permission or anything like that. And yeah, they can all live stream. So everybody can make a live event. And there are limitations that we have a little bit like at the bottom of the list here is one limitation is you can only have before the pandemic you could only have 15 live events running concurrently at the same time, and now since COVID started up through I believe the end of June still 2022, they've increased that to 50 live events. So your organization across your whole network, you can have 50 going at the same time, which that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we've never even come close. We've looked a lot at the live event reports going back like 3 months, 6 months, and we've never had actual live events more than maybe 2 or 3 at the same time whenever we exported the data and kind of laid the times on top of each other. So we're not even getting close to the 15 with a group of 25,000. But yeah, theoretically, you could run out, especially if it drops back down to 15 concurrent at the end of Microsoft's fiscal year, which is the end of June. If that goes back down to 15, you could run out, and it is a hard limit. So I gathered up like 50 of people, and I had everybody try to start a live event, so we like after hours, we pushed it to the limit. And when you hit that 15, the 16th one literally did say there's too many concurrent going on. You can't start a new one. So it's not like a soft limit or anything like that. You will get locked out. And if the 16th is the CEO's town hall, there's no way to prioritize that and kick somebody else off. So that is something you want to be aware of. Thoughts
Our
about what you're going to
approach
do, Andy?
Yeah, our approach to it has been, number one, it's training, adoption, and governance. When we started rolling out Microsoft Teams in October of 2019, we started specifically from the Teams meeting perspective. This is Teams meetings, and this is what you can do with it. And we didn't advertise live events. We didn't stop people from the live events. And we had some people that had some questions around it. And we would spend time with them doing some business analysis and walking through the scenario to see if a live event was actually going to fit into what they were actually trying to do. But we had a whole bunch of different departments and divisions that were already doing similar things using other technologies. And so, we would work with them if interest was shown. We kind of let them come to us with questions about the live events. Now, we started delivering our Microsoft 365 training using live events because it gave us more control inside of a meeting. We could moderate questions. We could,
Yeah.
minimize distractions, people coming in with hot mics and video on and disrupting other people. So we started doing trainings based off of live events, but we quickly learned there's a lot of overhead associated with that. You needed the
Mhm.
organizer of the event to be there to start it, and then the producer. So sometimes we'd have to have two or more people delivering a single training, and that got to be a little burdensome. But we didn't run into
Mhm.
network restrictions around that, because when we started implementing this, a lot of us were working remote or working from home at this point. So, we started rolling out Teams and these tools in October 2019. It was, early 2020 when the pandemic hit and everybody went remote. So it wasn't an internal bandwidth consideration. And even now, a few years later, going back and looking at some of our network traffic, um, the number of different types of events and things that we're working with, it's not really a concern for us in our organization. So much like you, we allow self-service team creation, we allow self-service meeting and webinar creation, even live events if somebody
Mhm.
wants to work with that. But we try to provide adoption and training and then governance on top of that. We will, walk you through the scenario, help you pick the best tool for what you're trying to do. But for the most part, my team is the one using a lot of these tools, like, because we're trying to
Mhm.
deliver remote training across all of the Microsoft 365 platform, everything from Teams to Yammer and everything in between, so that people can make the most of these technologies as they're working remote or going back into like hybrid offices. So that's kind of the way that we've approached it. Now, as far as like
Mhm.
hard numbers on like how it impacts the network, I'd have to go and talk to a couple of my colleagues and do some in-depth research on that just to see what they're saying. But when the question was first asked, network considerations, I'm like,
Mhm.
the first thing I thought of is like, all right, I'm on my home network and I'm delivering a live event. So like, do I have a
Mhm.
bottleneck on my home network? Because that's where I'm working from. And then the second thing that I think of off of that is like, when you look at some of the significant improvements that Microsoft's done on the back end of these technologies for the last 2 years to be able to scale from early 2020, like 10 to 15 active daily users, to something now north of what is 150 million active daily users. I think I saw
Mhm.
275 active monthly users, 275 million active monthly users in this platform. I saw that a couple of days ago. I think
Yeah.
a message Jeff Teeper retweeted on Twitter.
Mhm.
To scale and to be able to handle that amount of growth in such a short period of time, and to put a lot of this on the back end of the Microsoft network, they're handling a lot of that load for us, especially like when we're remote. So those are kind of things that I think about. We haven't hit any of the limits that I know of, and
Yeah.
like you're saying, 50 concurrent events. I don't think we're going to have 50 concurrent live events running. Our people are more Teams meetings and occasionally webinars.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably have 100,000 plus Teams meetings every single day, but definitely not live events. Those are a little bit more niche.
Yep.
This is a good point that John brings up, is the network considerations. Yeah, there's a limitation of like running out of slots in your tenant, but also the network. And Andy, as you mentioned, yeah, at home it's not a problem because I'm just from my house to the internet. I'm getting it directly, the bandwidth directly from the Microsoft cloud. But whenever you're in a corporate network, when we get back on campus, that is a concern. For our large town halls, for like the all company stuff, we use today a platform called Media Platform, and we use Peer 5 to optimize that. So we have like local caching servers on the network that handle the caching of the stream, and then they do like peer to peer sharing so that it's all optimized. Um, Microsoft does have a few partners in this space too. So if you're concerned about the corporate network, I would go on and search the internet for the ECDN partners for the Microsoft Stream service, and you'll find that there's 5 listed. There used to only be 3, but it's Hive, Collective, which is spelled with a K, Peer 5, Ramp, and Riverbed. So I can't speak to how good or bad any of those 5 are. I will say we looked at this a couple years ago and we tested out Hive, Ramp, and Collective, and we ended up not doing any optimization because COVID ended up happening. We all went home, but now there's 5. So Peer 5 and Riverbed, and Peer 5 is actually owned by Microsoft now. They acquired them a while back, so it'd be interesting to see if there any special integrations would come down the pipe. I don't know of anything specifically at this time. But yeah, that's a great question about that. Now, this is one thing that we have considered is implementing a knowledge check. So I did create a class on live events at Cerner, and we called it building your broadcast with Microsoft Teams live events, and it was mostly about the Teams encoded, only scheduled in Teams. But we did look at implementing that in our learning solution, and then having people take a quiz, and then based off of that quiz, put them into a group so they could schedule live events. You can do that. You can set up a group-based policy for who can schedule live events. The problem I ran into with Power Automate was I wanted to do it as like a form. I wanted to make a quiz, and then at the end of the quiz, you have a score. The problem was inside of the form connector for Power Automate, the score off of a quiz is not an accessible attribute. So I couldn't say like if over 80%, put them in this AD group. If under 80%, send them an email saying they need to take it again. So that was kind of where I ran into issues, Josh. I don't know if it's any different now, but that would be nice to be able to kind of automate like who can do a live event versus not, So I think we probably should keep this going here and talk about before your event. We talked about some of the benefits of the Yammer live events. What about actually getting started with it? I've decided that I want to do a Yammer live event. How do I actually do that? I'll go ahead and bring my screen up here so we can show the options that you can go through and kind of the workflow that I do whenever I create a live event. So I'm logged in here as Megan Bowen, and our journey to create a live event. If you're doing a Teams live event, you would do this inside the Teams app. But in Yammer, you do it on the Yammer website, of course. So we're going to go to yammer.com, logged in as Contoso. And then as this loads up here, you have to be the owner. You have to like be allowed by policy to create live events, but also you need to be an owner of the community that you're scheduling that in. And I want to say, I think Megan might be an owner of the CEO connection. Yes, she is. So let's say that she's going to make just a town hall event and she's going to do it in the CEO connection group. What she'll do is under the events tab at the top, you can click on that, and then you'll see a button over here on the right-hand side for create live event. Kind of zoom in on that a little bit. If you click on that, that brings up this wizard here. And this is like one of the easiest wizards ever. It's only, I think, 3 little clicks through. But we can do this and say like all company town hall, and we're going to have like Nestor be a presenter and say he's the CEO in this scenario. And we'll host it for my birthday, February 3rd, from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, because Contoso doesn't care about lunchtime for people. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then right here at the bottom, it says, is this a test live event? And basically, depending on what you answer here, it will either notify or not notify people when you go live. Well, this is not a test. We're going to do this for real. So I would say, no, this is not a test. And then I do want to have Q&A so that people can ask questions during this town hall. So I'm going to leave that toggled on. Then we're going to hit next. And now we're faced with a decision point. Do I want to do Microsoft Teams or do I want to do an externally encoded event? So to talk a little bit about Teams versus external encoding, Teams used to be called Quick Start. So now they've just gone with team and external, but I think Quick Start is a pretty good way to explain that, because with Teams you don't need any extra software. All you need is Microsoft Teams, which you're probably already running if you're running Yammer and you have Microsoft 365. So there's a less of a learning curve, or a little bit more of like getting up to speed whenever you talk about Teams versus Yammer encoding. And it's all self-contained. Another benefit of Microsoft Teams is you don't have to worry about how you're going to bring remote participants in. Whenever you get to external live events or externally encoded, that's talking about something like OBS Studio, or I'm using Restream today to stream to you all. vMix is another popular one if you're on a Windows PC. Um, those, a lot of them don't have native functionality for bringing remote presenters together so that you can have more than one person on screen. Restream, we're actually using the Restream native capabilities right now. That's how Andy went to a website link that I gave him, and I'm on that same website link. So that's how we're able to connect with each other. If you're doing a Teams live event, you don't have to worry about, how you're going to connect those people and put them on screen, because they're just in a Teams meeting together. You just happen to be broadcasting that meeting out to your audience. Um, Another thing about Teams encoding, and I'm going to select Teams encoding for this one, is the Teams Q&A. If you're used to Teams live events, that will be replaced with a Yammer Q&A. So we'll look at that, and we'll talk about how it's the more feature rich Yammer Q&A, even though you're inside of Microsoft Teams. And another benefit of a Teams encoding live event is two more things. First of all, you can have a side chat with your presenters. So because Teams is a chat platform, there's a private chat built in. So you can kind of say, hey, your microphone's a little bit hot, or, presenter number 3, you're up next. Are you ready? You can have those side conversations built into Microsoft Teams if you choose that encoder. And then finally, there's a little bit more intelligence when it comes to what is spoken during the Teams live event. There's live captions and translation if you go with a Teams encoded option. Now, externally encoded, if we were to select that option, the big reason for me why I would want to go external encoded is because you have a custom layout option. You can fully do whatever you want because it's just OBS or Restream or whatever service you're using to push that RTMP feed out. Because you have basically a blank canvas, you can do whatever you want. It adds a little bit more complexity and challenges, but you have a little bit better customization if that's your thing. It's definitely my thing. I'm sure that it's Andy's thing as well, that you want to customize like crazy whenever you do it. Do you think you're going to go mostly external encoding or Teams encoding?
Probably to start off with Teams encoding, simplifying the
Mm-hmm.
workflow as much as possible until really get an understanding of the capabilities that are essentially there out of the box. Then later on,
Mm-hmm.
we'll start working with some external encoding and bringing in complexity to the workflow, adding in
Mm-hmm.
all the magic that I can do in something like an OBS.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and select Teams encoding because we're gonna assume that like this is Megan's first time. She just wants it to be easy, and she already has Teams installed. So we're gonna choose that, and then it's gonna create the live event for me. And now we're left at this page. I mentioned earlier that that Yammer basically creates a page within your community around this live event. So that's what this looks like. All of the questions that are rolled up underneath that live event are down here at the bottom. And I'll show later on how I actually bring these questions on screen. so that everybody can see the comments as I'm scrolling through them. I think that's a really engaging way to do it, and something that you need an external encoder for if you want to do something like that and kind of put it on stage. But this is basically it. From here, I can share that live event and I can click the share button, and it gives me a link to this landing page. And I can do things like add it to a calendar. I can share via an email, or I can post this to the Yammer community. So I could copy this, go back into CEO Connection or to All Company and start advertising. Say, hey guys, here's the link to our live event coming up. It's going to be a great time. We had a feature for a while, but then it went away just like this week. So I was going to show what you can do. It got pulled, I guess, and then got moved out to like March. But it was available in Contoso, and that's the ability to share the event as an Outlook invitation. And I really, really liked that. I wish I could show it right now, because basically it gives you an HTML5 formatted invitation, calendar invite that you can send to your community. Because this is a Microsoft 365 connected community, I have the ability to send as that community. So this would come from the mailbox called CEO Connection, and it is a regular calendar invite for that date and time with the accept, decline, tentative. There's no RSVP on it, so if they accept it, it adds it to their calendar, but it doesn't email me 5,000 times every time somebody accepts the event. It just puts it on their calendar so they have a reminder. And I really, really like that. I wish I was able to show it here, because it's pretty interactive the way that it works. I think it's nice polish. But I've got this link now. Fast forward to the day of the event. We're getting ready to start the event. What you're going to do is you're going to come back to this page. And if it's a few days later, maybe you lost how to get to it, your event is always available on this events tab right here. So if you click on this, it's going to show your upcoming events that are coming up. There's that all company town hall. So I can open that, and then I'm ready to produce this inside of Microsoft Teams, because remember, we selected the Teams encoding option. So as soon as I open that, it's going to open up Microsoft Teams from my browser. So I'm going to hit open. And you do have to use the full Teams application. But this is going to join me to that event right here. And so we're going to get this separate window. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and show my camera. I'm not going to do my microphone. But we're going to join now and see what the layout looks like. I guess I should log in as Nestor here. Let's go ahead and bring him up so we can get our second guy on screen. So just like a typical Microsoft Teams live event, you have the queue right here. So your preview, you have your program output, which is what the audience is going to see, the yellow box. Right now, they would see the words, "This live event hasn't started yet." Because there's no content, I can't actually go live at this time yet. But we're going to get Nestor on here. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. Nestor got sick. His VM's not working. So we're going to have Alex come on screen. And this is something I can do inside of Teams, is like, there's a last minute cancellation. I can bring on a person ad hoc if I want by going right here to the participants pane inside of Teams. If I open this up, then you'll see that like Nestor, he was invited to this event, but his virtual machine's not working right now. So instead, we're going to bring in Alex, because I have his machine open. So I can click request to join, and I can bring on a guest even though they weren't invited to the event. And now it's ringing over here on this side. If I go ahead and accept this, and I'm going to share my camera in there. So here's Alex's window. So this is coming up. He's like, oh no, I'm going to join a town hall. He's going to hit go because he's a risky individual. And then now that he's been brought on, I have Alex at the bottom. Even though they're in two physical separate locations, I can bring Alex on screen. If Alex shares his screen, this is just a meeting from Alex's perspective. So he can go on and be like, okay, gosh, I got to share the slide deck, don't I? And he could do PowerPoint Live, or he could just select his screen right here. So he is sharing his screen. That's available to Megan, the producer. So she can go side by side. That's the little content on the left. She can bring that up. That looks great. We're going to send that to the stage, but we're still not live yet. It still says pre-live. What we want to do is we want to hit start. That's going to push this yellow box out to Yammer, so that now we can start getting interaction. We can start getting all of the Q&A that we're looking forward to doing, and we'll see it all come into play here. So now we're live. We have the red box available to us, and over in Yammer, get my mouse back. Over in Yammer, we see that now there's a play button because this is actually live, and you've notified the people who are in CEO connection. You've sent them a Yammer notification that says CEO connection is now live, and there's this like visual indicator. If I go up to my bell icon, this is what it's going to look like. All company town hall is live in CEO connection, join event. So that went to everybody's bell icon inside of Yammer. And if you've pushed out the communities application inside of Microsoft Teams, you've also notified their activity bell inside of Teams. So you're kind of like turning everybody's attention to this Yammer group to say, hey, everybody, we're live now. If I go over to CEO connection as just a browser, I'm just looking at the connection home feed. This is pinned to the front right here at the top. That's the live event that is currently in play. If I open that up, then it's going to automatically start playing for me. And it looks a little bit different to the audience. This is the producer's view. So I have what people are seeing. I have the player, and then I also have questions and comments. So I could do like, welcome everyone. And then people can do a nested reply to that. They could do a like or a celebration icon if they want to. And there's the comment feed. Now, I can show you what it looks like from the presenter or from the audience's perspective. So remember, Alex was not invited to this live event, so he's just an audience member if he goes to Yammer. So when he goes to Yammer, he's going to see a slightly different layout that's more of a like a side-by-side layout. So he's watching it on one side, and the Q&A is over to the right-hand side, which is great because if you want to see the questions, you don't have to scroll away from the video. This is how it looks to the audience. So you've got the big player on the left-hand side, and then you've got the other player over here, or the comment feed on this side. Right. So as you can see, you could do a Teams encoded live event where it basically you're doing all the work inside of Teams. She didn't have to download anything. She didn't have to do any special training or software. She didn't need any hardware, really. It's just her webcam and Alex's webcam and a screen share. And then they were able to push that out to Yammer, and basically you take over that Yammer community during your live event so that everybody kind of turns their attention toward what you want, which is to watch the live event that's going on. So that's a quick demo of that. And like, Andy, I think this would probably be good in your scenario if you have people on your team that you want to start doing those training classes in Yammer. You want to start, using the existing community, but they don't have the OBS experience that you have. I think this might be a good way to kind of get them involved.
Right.
And they don't need a custom show. They could just bring up their PowerPoint, or they could share their screen and teach the classes if it was a Teams meeting. It's just now you're pinning that at the top of the Yammer community.
Yeah. You're meeting people at the community, a place where they already gather, and you're simplifying that process. I think the big takeaway from you creating one of these and launching it is the simplicity of, I go to the community where I want this to be, broadcast. I can create everything pretty much right from there. And then when it's time for me to join, it's essentially a Teams meeting. I do need to queue and then go live, and then I can run it from there. but from
Mhm.
the overhead that goes into setting this up, it's significantly lower than trying to go through a whole bunch of other methods. And we're going to talk about some of those other methods and some of the ins and
Mhm.
outs of that here in just a few minutes. But the big two takeaways for me: the simplicity to set it up, and then you're
Mhm.
meeting people in the place where they already gathered. They've joined the community. They might be receiving notifications. And now with the Yammer community app coming into Teams, you can meet them inside of Teams. So you can turn
Mhm.
those heads, like you said, to that event. That is also one of the reasons why we don't post in like the all company, because that's a whole lot of
Yeah.
heads to turn, and that could potentially be disruptive to work. And in a healthcare environment, our first priority is patient care. So that's
Mhm.
something to that we consider. So we would want to point to a smaller community overall. I know there was a question a while back about people being concerned about interactivity whenever you're doing a live event, and that is a
Yeah.
valid concern, the interactivity. But you showed a couple of things. You showed the Q&A. You showed the discussion that's actually happening there. But from an
Mhm.
interactive standpoint, one thing as a presenter that you need to know, there is that live event delay. There's going to be like a 20-second delay between when you deliver something and when the audience
Mhm.
actually sees it. And then they'll see it and respond. You might be a minute or two down the line onto something else before that comes back. So that is something you need to
Yeah.
factor in when you're considering delivering something like this. There is going to be that delay from when you go live to when that content reaches the user, and then they're able to complete that feedback loop to you.
Mhm. Yeah. Sorry if you hear my 3-year-old screaming right now.
I
He's
couldn't tell
trying
if
to
that
get
was
my
yours
wife's
or
attention.
my 10-month
No.
old.
Yeah. No, he's screaming. It's very echoey in my new house. We have a lot of hardwood. So,
Rugs
yeah,
and sound
she's like, "What
panels.
is your problem?" Oh, she was outside. I just heard the front door latch. We got a new puppy, so we're taking the puppy out like every 15 minutes, you know? And so she was outside and he's trying to get her attention from the inside. I don't know why he doesn't put a coat on and ask her a question. Um, but yeah, like my thoughts on that, you do lose a little bit of that two-way interactivity because this is a broadcast. There is going to be a delay inherent to that. Um, One thing that I've done in the past is to have a poll inside of the live event is you could launch a Microsoft form. So you could ask a question or a couple questions and share that as a QR code. So I've put before like a QR code is like an icebreaker or something like that on screen. Tell people to scan that with their phone and vote now. And then what you want to do is not look at it immediately. What you want to do is look at it like a minute or two later. So I throw that up on screen, then I go talk about something else, and then I go back and check the results live on screen. So people feel like they're contributing a little bit, but you don't end up in this like weird time loop of like a 20 to 40-second delay between like you saying something and people hearing it. You've given people enough time to go vote on the poll. So it doesn't work good for something like Kahoot. You definitely don't want to do that in a live event because those are time sensitive, and people are going to see that after a delay, and then it's not going to be fair as far as like gamifying something. But if you want to like ask a question like what region are you watching from, and you put like all the countries your company operates in, you could totally do that, and then you could throw up a live pie chart and get a little bit more activity that way.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping it
So,
interactive definitely drives engagement in that. So anything you can do to
mhm,
drive that interactivity definitely helps as part of that event. Another thing to point out around this, we're talking about
mhm.
pushing this into the Yammer side of the world, but you still have the ability to join in the Teams live event just through Microsoft Teams, correct?
Do what now? Word that again.
So
Sorry.
we're pushing a team, we're doing a Yammer live event, we're delivering it through Yammer, but users still
Uh-huh.
have the ability just to join in the live event from the Teams side of the house as just like a Teams live event.
Actually, no. Yeah, it's specifically on the Yammer group, so there's no Teams link, like you get
Okay.
like an attendee link. It's technically going to be a Yammer link or Microsoft Stream. So like this is actually streaming out using Microsoft Stream. So if I go, let's go here as Megan. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me show that. If I go over here and hit share, there's the Yammer attendee link, but there's also a stream attendee link. So there's not a Teams attendee link, unfortunately. The other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if I just hit a weird bug or something because I've never seen this before. My Q&A icon is missing from Microsoft Teams. So I swear I've done lots of Teams live events with, Yammer as a Teams encoded, and you should have a Q&A icon up here at the top that just shows the Yammer feed. For some reason, I'm not seeing that on my toolbar up here at the top, but you should see that. If you don't, you're going to want to, have the Q&A up on another screen so you can interact and do that type of stuff. But I'm not sure why I didn't see that inside of this demo. A couple more comments here. Somebody posted, they got to update that test event language. I agree. Like that line where it says, "Is this a test event? Yes or no?" Like, I think it's not a question. It's like, "This is a test event. Yes or no?" And it kind of feels weird. Like, no, this is not a test event or something. I don't know. I feel like that maybe it should be like a toggle or something, like test event question mark and then like a toggle on or off. But yeah, that is maybe a little bit confusing wording. It's been that way, gosh, for probably a year and a half now. So maybe not too confusing for most people. Sharing as an Outlook event that used to work. I had no idea why it went away. So yeah, I know I'm not crazy. I actually made a YouTube video about how to do it. And then I noticed just this week that it stopped working. So who knows, Phil? Maybe they're gonna make it so canceling works and re-release it. I don't know. So yeah, sent from the Office 365. Yeah, hopefully it would handle some updates and stuff like that. I did notice that if I canceled a live event, it didn't actually cancel. I had to go make an announcement on the Yammer community to say, "Hey everybody, sorry, we had a scheduling mess up, so take this off your calendar." So let's see here. We got a little bit more questions. Do you find you still need the pre-live counter to give people time to join in response to the notification? I do. I always like to start with like bookends. We started this live event with a 2-minute countdown timer. There was like some music playing and it kind of gets people ready and they know when it's going to start. I still would recommend that, whether it's going to be putting a PowerPoint slide up that has a countdown timer. I've literally done a Google timer before and just thrown that up on screen to say, "Hey, we'll start in 5 minutes." Or you could do something more fancy with like an OBS virtual camera or something with a proper countdown timer. Yeah, so here's Andy's screen, and you can kind of see what he does.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the pre-live counter for any event. It just lets people know, especially in a virtual world, that things like audio and video are working. It lets them know when the event is actually going to start, and you can also use it for housekeeping. So I'm in the process of actually developing one for some of the training where we talk about some of the housekeeping prior to the event. So like if I'm doing Teams training, we say things like, make sure you keep your microphone muted during the presentation. Unless you have a question, you can raise your hand or you can use the chat window. This presentation will be recorded. This is where it's going to be. I can give all of that information in the 2 or 3, 5 minutes prior to the event actually starting. And I usually overlap by about 2 minutes. So if like we're scheduled to start at the top of the hour, I'll wait until about 2 minutes afterward to start. And, I'll let people know, hey, we're going to get started in just a minute. We're going to let everybody get settled in. But I like having the pre-live screen. And so I created this because of some content that John posted on this, but also our friend Tracy Vandersnife also talked about doing this for their events. And I thought it was a brilliant idea. So I actually have these queued up and ready to go for events that I like delivering, like some one I've used for a conference where I did some virtual online training, and just lets people know, hey, this is
Yeah.
when we're going to get started. I did this in OBS, but you could do this inside of PowerPoint. It's super easy. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of ways to do it, but yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. Phil mentioned Tracy as well. She has a great YouTube video about how to do a countdown timer inside of PowerPoint and then use that as a Teams live event countdown timer. So I would definitely look that up on YouTube. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago she posted that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think she was using animated GIFs for hers. Another thing I've done in the past is I've done like a text countdown timer inside of OBS. Then I've just recorded that like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, and then just put that video inside of PowerPoint. Like you could even kind of do it that way if you don't want to like use OBS as the live switching
Yeah.
software.
Yeah, like I've done the PowerPoint version where you can put in like a video and have it loop, or you can put in an animated
Hmm.
GIF. The only drawback to that is that PowerPoint has to be active. So if you go and click on another window, that deactivates the PowerPoint, and so it stops the
Hmm.
motion. Uh, and then I tried it a
Yeah.
few times in PowerPoint Live. It worked a couple of times, and then a few times for some reason the video wouldn't load. I don't know if like maybe the background video was a little too big, or
Hmm.
that I was using. So it's PowerPoints. There's a little there. It depends on the day and the way that the wind's blowing, the results that I
Hmm.
have. But when I do it in OBS, which is what you're actually seeing here, it works very,
Yeah.
very well. And with OBS, that countdown timer down at the bottom, I can set that to count down to a specific hour, minute, and second. I could also just have it like I've got another one that I use like for a break screen. So like when we're going on a break, typically break's going to be 15 minutes. I've got one that just as soon as I switch into it, it just starts counting
Yeah.
down
It starts
15
counting
minutes.
down.
Yep. And this one, it's got a little video just so there's a little bit of motion. So in addition to the countdown timer, it's just got a little bit of motion that goes into it. And it's just, it lets you know the
Hmm.
screen's not frozen. There's movement there, and you could add like audio on the back end of it, and that helps for people
Hmm.
to test their setup. You're joining in that pre-live screen. If you see motion and you hear something, everything's working, and then we don't have to answer all those questions in the chat window. Has this started yet? I can't see anything. Are you guys hearing something? So
Yeah.
it's just a couple of different ways to do it, but I've put these together in OBS over the last couple of years, and they're really helpful. But you can do some similar things with PowerPoint.
Hmm. To share something a little bit with you, this is something that somebody showed me like a week ago. I think you talked about like having a little bit of movement on screen. What you could do with OBS, you could do like a browser source if you wanted. And then I found this awesome website from a friend of mine. It's remarkable.com/room to think is what it's called. And there are these little virtual rooms that have animation in it. So if you did like the Stay Mellow one, you could bring that up as a browser source in OBS with your timer on top of it. And then when it's actually playing, you guys can't hear this right now, but there's like chill hop music playing in the background. And like you can see the cat is like blinking and like his tail's moving a little bit. The pages will turn on the book every so often. There's like a cloud is moving by. You can kind of see that movement. So you could do that if you wanted to have like that with music built in. I
That's
love
really
this
cool.
website. I've been leaving it up a lot lately.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll bookmark
Yeah.
that later.
Um, there's a couple people asked this question about like, hey, can you join from the communities app? And yeah, you actually could inside of Teams in the communities app. This is live. CEO connection is live. So the people, they can watch that inside of the communities app inside of Teams if they want. So they don't have to go to the Yammer website specifically or the progressive web app if that's what they have installed. And I'll load this up. There it is right there. But to show you in Teams also, see the activity bell right there. It says Alex asked to join. It might be under Alex's Teams notifications. No, he must not have those set up. But yeah, in the activity bell, it would say like CEO connection is now live. If they click on that in Teams, it'll load up the live event. inside of the Communities app on this right-hand pane. So yeah, that will work though. So great questions about doing that in Teams. Leslie, welcome. Yeah, I know it's like super early in the morning for. Oh no, you're in the UK, aren't you? I think you're in the UK, so it's late for you. But yes, this is being recorded, so you're gonna be able to watch this on LinkedIn at the page that you're at now, or on my YouTube channel and Andy's YouTube channel, because we're doing like pair channels. So there's a few ways that you can watch this
Yeah, we're really
on
testing out
demand.
the limits of Restream and what it's capable of. This is pretty impressive, streaming
Yeah.
to multiple channels at the same time, to YouTube
Mm.
channels and then LinkedIn, and then also bringing in the comments from YouTube and LinkedIn. As we're doing this,
Mhm.
like I'm seeing comments. Some are flagged from YouTube, some are flagged from LinkedIn. So there's two different audiences coming in. This is
Yeah.
pretty neat to see as we're doing this live.
Mhm. This is so nice having folks from the product group watching this. So Steve did confirm they did remove that Q&A button, so that was intentional. I didn't hit a random bug inside of Teams, I guess. And then also he agrees that wording might be a little bit weird, so he's bringing that feedback back to the product team. So maybe we'll get that changed, and it'll be make a little bit more sense. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Andy. Another question here for John Sims. He was asking, is there still like a delay whenever you're switching? Well, let's try it. So let's switch out Megan for Alex. So we're gonna switch that out and then send that live. So that was about like what, a second and a half, and then yeah, the send live over to here was about, I guess, what, maybe about 2 or 3 seconds. So 1,000, 1,000, and then 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. So that was like 7 or 8 seconds to push it live. So yeah, you have the same expectation as what you have in a Teams live event. So
So before we go into, I know we were
mhm,
gonna talk about some of the different ways that we've done. Like,
yeah.
so we went over how we've set this up, like for a Yammer Live event, but we were going to compare and contrast a little bit with some of the other methods. So thought we could
Mhm,
spend just a couple of minutes talking about some of the other methods that we've used for delivering some of the training and some of the setup and overhead
mhm,
involved with that. That way, we really have a full perspective of what we can do with the Yammer Live events, featuring Teams as the back end versus like what if we just did Teams meetings or webinars or Teams live events.
mhm,
So we I'm on like my fourth version of what to use and when and like how to deliver this content. So when we first started delivering it, we would just do it as a Teams meeting. So we would schedule it as a Teams meeting, and then just use like the settings that were there. Um, but there were a couple of limitations. So like you schedule out like a training event. I'll add, so like, I want this person to definitely be a required person, and then like I have a group of people. Maybe I want to make them optional for that particular event. Right. So we would schedule this out. We would go ahead, pick a time, deliver it, whatever. All right. And so we'd push that out. And so we started doing this in the beginning, but some of the frustration is, all right, we go ahead and set this up. Do we want response options, allowing them to forward this to other people, or do we, how do we want to broadcast this? So just a normal Teams meeting, set it up. So that's scheduled. That'll show up on the calendar here in just a moment, and then I would be able to go in. There's my test training event, and then when I go back and re-expand it, that's in the Teams world when I can start working with my Teams options or my meeting options. So when I can say like who's going to be able to present, who's going to be able to um, uh, turn on or off their microphone and their camera, and the level of interactivity. And these options that have, to Microsoft's credit, have been updated over the last couple of years, and they're giving us more options, but they're also tied into the meeting policies in the admin center. So, we need to be able to communicate with our administrators to get certain types of options set up there. So we take the meeting options, that's going to open up, whatever screen, default browser, and then it's going to try to go from there. So like, got to set the meeting up, and then I would have to go back and update the meeting options, and that's going to apply to like the presenters and whatnot. Then I have to copy the link for that, and then we had to broadcast it in some capacity. And so we were doing a lot of manual effort for this. We were broadcasting in
Yeah.
our Yammer communities. We were broadcasting in our corporate intranet. We were broadcasting in some cases via email, and then in some places in Microsoft Teams. But there was a lot of manual effort going into this. So like, we create the meeting, but then we've got to get the word out about what we're going to, what we're going to be doing. So, and adjusting the
Hmm.
meeting options. Whereas we saw with the Yammer Live event, we were pushing that to a community. And if you were already involved in the community, there was a lot of notification that could happen already based off of that community. And it gave you
Hmm.
the options right from when you were creating it to be able to push that out, maybe send an email, maybe grab the calendar link, but it was advertising it in Yammer. And if people are part of that community, they might have notifications set up. They get a notification that an event's been created. And if they've got Yammer communities in Teams, they get a notification in Teams around that as well. So that's handling some of the notifications for us. But with the manual effort, like with a Teams meeting, we create the
Hmm.
meeting and then we've got to broadcast that somehow. So that was a point of complexity added to our workflow. Create the event, then set up the meeting options, and then go and start working with all the different um, advertising methods that we might have to work through. And then we ran into the problem where people would join the event, and they would join the event and come in right away with a microphone that's unmuted or a camera, and like
Yeah.
they've got their camera on and they're walking across the house and it's pointed at the ceiling, or any number of things. And so we'd have to deal with that. And so like, what we found in the beginning is, even with just a simple Teams meeting, it was hard for me to deliver the content and put on my professional trainer hat and moderate at the same
Hmm.
time. So in many cases, most of the time, we would have two people on the event, me delivering the content, and then one of my colleagues sitting in to handle moderation, muting those hot microphones, turning off cameras, helping to answer some of the questions that were coming through in the chat window while I was delivering the training. So we started off with that method, just a normal Teams meeting. The second version of this, we were like, well, we like some interactivity, but we want to be able to control it. We want to be able to moderate it a little bit, and we want to be able to minimize maybe the microphones and the cameras and so forth. So we took a look at using the Teams Live event, and so we did Teams Live events for quite a while. But we ran into a level of complexity there as well. So we've got some of the benefits we were looking for. We were able to minimize, the mics and cameras, and we could bring people into the meeting if we absolutely needed to. We got to moderate questions if we needed to. But then there was the setup. So we'd have to create the live event. We would have producers and organizers, and our live events we would create with a specific account so that our team could manage it. The issue with that is that account had to kick off the live event for me to be able to go in and present, and that account would also be the one that would push out the notifications around it. That way we could not get bombarded like, hey, you're the presenter, I got 10,000 questions, or here's a confirmation email or whatever. So we were kind of using almost a service account for that, but we needed that account to kick off the meeting, which meant we needed somebody else to either log in, or I would have to run two computers and log in, start the meeting, and then I would go in and do the present. And I would go back and forth. Like if I were delivering it solo, I would be organizer over here on this machine and the presenter over here on this machine. But we found very quickly that we typically needed a second person to be able to sit in and help with some of that moderation. Then, as we talked a
Hmm.
little bit about earlier, we did have the 20 to 30 second delay between when I delivered something, when somebody would see it, then be able to reply back. So I would have to spend a little bit of extra
Yeah.
time at the end of the meeting circling back to something that maybe I talked about an hour ago. So there was that feedback loop that was delayed inside of there. The other thing that we found about the live event model that was a little frustrating was the recording. We try to scale our resources as much as we can, and so when we deliver one of these trainings, we record it and we would put it inside of Microsoft Stream, and then we would also
Hmm.
link to that from a SharePoint web page, and we would use that as a way to allow people after the fact to go back and view that content. The video for the live event from the team side was actually stored in Azure. So we'd have to go to Azure and then download the video, take up local resources, and then we'd have to upload it into Stream. It could take 20 or 30 minutes depending on how long that particular training or
Yeah.
delivery was. And so that that's adding to that workflow, going and making sure that we get that that content from Azure, get it into our Stream channel and group, and then linking to it through SharePoint web page and a web part. Additionally, that I believe the attendance was also over there. So we had to make sure that we went and downloaded the attendance, I think, before the event actually ended, or I
Hmm.
can't remember if we actually went into Azure to grab that or not. But the attendance was important. We needed to know the number of people that attended that particular event so that we could base our numbers around that. So there's a lot of overhead there. You got the feedback loop overhead. You've got the possibly running two computers to deliver one presentation, or still with the moderation there. You've got the lack of full interactivity from the user perspective, and then you've got
Yeah.
the video part and the workflow there. So continuing, my team and especially my colleague Casey put a lot of work and effort into coming up with like a custom Teams webinar scenario that could address some of these needs and these limitations for us. And she actually went in and she put the work in this, and it was absolutely incredible what she did. But she basically built Teams webinars before Teams webinars were released, and she did it using SharePoint List and Power Automate and Power Apps. So what Casey did
That's
was
awesome.
there's like a list where we keep all the courses that we're going to deliver for a particular time period. So we've got a SharePoint list on the back end. We have the title of the event, the times that we're going to deliver it, whether it's live or not, so that we could filter and have it show up inside of a Power App, and then a description around that. We would link to this Power App. So we would like embed it in in SharePoint site. We would link to
Hmm.
that, and so users could scroll through and they could see, okay, these are like the upcoming events that are gonna we're gonna deliver, and from there they could drill down into it, get more information, and then if they were interested, then they could go in and you got the field, and so they could sign up for it. She had a couple of tools on the back end that would help with the scenario. So she had, when an event was created, she would create an ICS file and drop that into a document library. And then when somebody signs up for it, in addition to getting a notification, it would send the ICS file. So she had a library for all of
Hmm.
those. She had a library or a SharePoint list for registration. So we could go into the list and say, well, filter down by this particular category or filter down by this particular date and time, and we could very quickly get the registration numbers ahead of time. And
Hmm.
then during the actual Teams meeting, because that's what this was scheduling, was Teams meetings, then we could go in and get the attendance from that. But she built this, and it was a combination of Power Apps and Power Automate and a couple of SharePoint lists, and then a document library to house the IS files. That really
Hmm.
streamlined the workflow for us. The hard part was building the app portion of it. She put a lot of work into that, and then automating it. But like that streamlined a lot of delivering those events for us. Then Microsoft released the webinar feature, and so we had to make a decision: do we continue using our version of this and maintaining it and moving with it forward, or do we pivot and take advantage of the Microsoft version of it? It was released May
Hmm.
of last year, I think, is when it finally went live. It was really announced early in the spring. So we used ours until about middle of the year, and I think in the fall we switched over to the Teams webinar version of it. And we really wanted to, number one, we wanted to use the tools that we teach and that we advocate, rather than doing like our
Hmm.
own custom version. We wanted to really showcase, hey, this is the Microsoft version of it. Let's really showcase the capabilities there. So that was one of the reasons that we switched to this. We also got the ability to take advantage of the Microsoft registration form. So that gave a registration URL form, all the information. We could have our presenters separate, a link for them to present, and then a link for attendees. And so we're able to separate those two. And so we were using the webinar capability, but we've since learned there's a couple of frustrations there as well. So I'm going to be the presenter of the webinar, presenter organizer. The recording for that meeting is going to be in my OneDrive account. So with the Teams meeting recordings expiration policy, I need to make sure that I download that video and then get it into Stream or wherever before the expiration policy hits. Now, this is something that's in the process of kind of rolling out now, but I believe the default on Teams meeting recording expiration is 60 days, depending on what
Hmm.
your company policy is to make adjustments to that. So that's something that I have to be mindful of. I have to go and get it out of my OneDrive and then move it to SharePoint or move it over into Stream. The other thing about that is that if I'm the one that's organizing and creating this, the attendance is going to be associated with a list in my OneDrive, and the registration form is going to be also associated with a list in my OneDrive. And those are private lists. They're on the back end. You have to do a workaround in order to get to them. But that also means that I can't use something like a Power Automate to reach those directly. To maybe, like, I delivered 5 webinars yesterday. I can't create a workflow to go and grab the attendance and the registration and drop that into Excel file automatically. I'm having to manually go back and pull down all that information and put it together. So there's not any connectors with Power Automate to be able to reach those files because they're in my OneDrive. So this webinar capability is very much dependent on my OneDrive access. And if I win the lottery and I just decide, hey, I'm not coming into work on Monday, and we didn't get the registration, attendance, and things like that from the previous week, that can be some headaches for my team.
Hmm.
So the registration form was great. Uh, the ability to separate the presenters and the attendees was actually great. But then we got the headache, or the extra workflow for managing the meeting recordings, the attendance, and then the registration forms and the manual effort that goes into that. Also, broadcasting this, like, we get a link for the attendees to sign up from that registration form, but how do we distribute
Hmm.
that? That's something that really appeals to me about the Yammer Live event version of this, because I can reach Yammer and those communities and the notifications and meet people where they're already gathering, versus having to go back and manually distribute this and publish it across all these different channels to be able to draw people in. When you showed me some of the numbers that
Yeah.
you were getting doing that method versus some of the work and effort that we're doing, I'm like, we have to find a bridge to be able to reach a much larger audience, and continuing to push this stuff out versus and meet them where they're already gathering, versus, like,
Hmm.
going and soliciting on every organizational corner, and like, you guys want to attend our webinar? Like, we want to be able to meet people where they're already asking questions and engaging, and just get them to turn their head and join in from there. So
Yeah.
these methods that we've gone through, we've learned a lot, and we've taken all this back, and we've shared it through the organization. But the meeting people in Yammer, in addition to the normal methods that we use, is really appealing to, especially, continue to increase that audience across the board. So I just wanted to mention
Hmm.
that, kind of compare a little bit with the 3 or 4 different methods. But definitely want to give a big shout out to my colleague Casey for the work that she put in for that custom home version of Teams
Yeah,
webinars.
that's
That
so
was awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, she put a ton of work into that, and that was webinars for us before Microsoft went with webinars.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. And it kind of solves a lot of like complaints people still have about webinars, about like being able to see everything that's available and sign up for what you want. Um, yeah, that is super slick. So you talked about like a lot of the work leading up to, and we've talked about like how you can make an announcement in Yammer. You can soon you'll be able to send a calendar invite directly from the Yammer live event and all of that. But after the event, you also had a lot of work to do in your current layout of like getting the attendee list, seeing what analytics are there, as well as downloading the video and uploading the video to stream and then sharing that out. That's a new link. So I think it would be good to kind of move on to talking about after the event and what we have by using a Yammer live event available to us. So, if I show my screen here, this is an actual live event that I hosted at Cerner. I do this thing called What's New and Next in Office 365. This is our one from November. And you can see here I had 471 views. There's 8 conversation threads. And we'll talk about this in the limitations a little bit, but I never really think that number is very representative because some people ask a question at the top level, but a lot of people ask a question nested underneath an existing question, so I don't think that's representative of the number of proper questions that were in there. But there was a lot of eyes on this for 3,000-ish people. We got like 1/6 of the entire group. We got their attention basically. And this is kind of what it looks like that I'll show at the end in OBS how I put this together. But I have like a pre-show screen. It's doing like a little countdown, and I've just got like me on screen just getting ready, but it's all muted. It's just music playing. And then this is the view of those comments. So when I talked about how I can bring comments on screen, I'll show exactly how I do that. But we've got a comment feed along the side, so I can show that. And that's really nice that when you're watching on demand, you can see what people said on demand. It's kind of like replaying the entire experience. And then a little bit further on, I switch to doing the slides. So I've got the slides with me right next to it. I go back to Q&A. I'm doing some live demo. So that's kind of the layout of the live event that people can watch. But it's available on demand immediately after. You don't have to download the video, upload the video, trim it, do a bunch of work with it. It's just available right now. And the way that you can adjust and edit this if you want to, because I had like 15 minutes at the beginning of time that I didn't want to have people sit all the way through, right? I want to trim off that countdown timer. So the way that I can find this, since I'm the organizer of, is I'll just go into, so we go to stream.microsoft.com, and we're going to look for that what's new and next, right? We got to find, and then we can trim it in the service without downloading anything or anything like that. So that was the November 2021 one. And this is some feedback. It would be really nice if, as an organizer, if I had like a link to the stream video, like right here. That was pretty nice. But I searched for it. I can find it down here. Well, I'm not finding it. Actually, you know what? Another way. I could hit share, stream link, copy that. There we go. Let's copy that. We'll get to the video. So here's the video, but because I'm the owner, I can edit the video if I want to. Let me pause that. The Yammer conversation is right there. I can see everybody talking. I can change and edit the transcript. If I want to add a poll after the video or on demand, you do have some interactivity in stream. So you can add forms, kind of do like checkpoints throughout. But then down here at the bottom, I can do the ... dots, and I can trim the video right here. So if I hit trim, this is going to load up without downloading the video and re-uploading it. It's going to load up the ability for me to kind of scrub through here, and I can go back a little bit. So like the 1 minute mark. Let's have a little bit of a timer on there. So I scrolled forward to where there was 9 seconds left. And then I can make that the beginning point by doing this front bracket. I can make that the beginning. And then all I got to do is up at the top, hit apply. And if we hit apply, then now It's going to shorten that video, take off that beginning chunk, but it's not going to change the link to the video. It's not going to change where it is anywhere on this page. Everything still works intact. I've just shortened it without having to, do what you were talking about, go download it from the team service, edit the video, upload the video, share a new link to it, and all of that. So I really like that about Yammer Live Events is like, I don't have to go mess with anything. I'm just done teaching. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore. The other thing that I wanted to
Significantly
show,
shortens your workflow, because my
yeah,
workflow is
I can
pretty
just
heavy,
go
like,
have
after this
lunch.
is over.
hmm I could be done, and I'm tired after doing like a 3-hour class online. I don't want to also have to like mess with like the video stuff, and I'll forget if I walk away. With this, I don't have to worry about it. I just walk away. Um, Now, the other thing that I was going to show is this organizer insights. You talked about like downloading the attendee report. One of the limitations of Yammer Live Events is that you don't have an explicit like CSV file of who attended and how long. So you're not going to want to use this for like continuing education credits or something like that. This is more for, we're putting this out in the community. People can watch it if they want to, but it's kind of loose, and it's here if you need it. So you're not going to have that granular where you can see exactly who did what, but you do have some pretty good insights into this. And I think that's an appropriate word, honestly, to call this insights versus analytics or reports, because it's kind of a broader view. It's a little bit higher level. But I can see that 20 people went to that page before the event started. I had 282 that watched it while it was live, and then I have 169 that actually watched it after the event was over. So this is why that persistent Q&A is so valuable, is that 169 people benefited from the ability to also ask a question if they wanted to, and we could answer that for them. The average time that people watched was 1 hour and 47 minutes out of a 2-hour video. That's pretty good. And then over time, I can scroll up here with my mouse and I can see that we kind of ramped up in the first like 5 minutes. At 10 minutes, we were at 148, 15, 161. So we kind of got really close to that high level mark pretty early on. It was like a 15-minute countdown timer. So we were pretty well peaked at the 15-minute mark. And that's when I actually went live. And we maintained that high number of about 200 the entire time. Um, and if we go over here, there's another tab at the top of this insight report where we go to engagement. This will show like the number of messages during different portions. So like there was a lot of messages here at the beginning, and that was me like going live. I was sending things in the chat like, hey, where are you watching from? What are you going to do for Christmas? Welcome everybody. I was throwing gifts in there and stuff like that. So I was kind of generating messages. So you can kind of see like it was active at the beginning. And then about, I guess, 3/4 of the way through, it got active again. So I could go in time at 1 minute and 20 seconds, or no, 1 hour and 20 minutes, and kind of see like, okay, what was going on? Why was it so active? Because it gave me a timestamp. I can see the reactions over time. I can see what type of reactions people use. So there was 23 likes, there were 9 loves, 2 laughs, 1 celebrate, and 0 thanks and sads. The number of questions versus answered questions. So you can like go in here and there's 33% of these questions are unanswered. So now you can go back, you can sort by the unanswered questions and go ahead and give them an answer after the fact if you want to. And then you could see the top conversations and the top questions and stuff like that. So this is really helpful, and like seeing that 33%, that makes me want to go fix that. So like I could click out of here and I'm still on the page for the live event. Now I could go through this filter at the top of the Q&A. I could drop that down and I could just filter for unanswered questions right there. So I'll click on that. And then now if I scroll down, I can see which questions are unanswered. So I can give it an answer and then I can mark it as a best answer. And then that will lower that 33% thing for me. So that's what I do after an event. And hopefully that kind of gives you, Andy, a little bit of like what you can do after your event is over. Um, and you go in and kind of do like your video pruning and cool stuff like that.
Significantly shortens the workflow, and that's the biggest takeaway, is that a lot of the work is already being done for you, where and
Hmm.
that's the when you showed me this back in November, that's really what got the wheels turning. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out if this is something that we can do, and then the steps that we need in order to get there, and then test it out. And I've been working and testing and doing that for a couple months now. But it's the
Hmm.
benefits of shortening the workflow, where I don't have to track down the video and then get it to the correct location. I don't have to go back and do all of the reaching the audience with it. With the Yammer
Hmm.
Live event, the video is already in the community where I want to reach people anyways. And then the discussion from the presentation is already there and can continue and is ongoing, as well as any questions and Q&A that happened during that. And then the analytics are right there for
Hmm.
me to be able to go back and very quickly at a glance see, how we were doing in this particular this particular session. And so I can meet the audience. We're already pushing our audience. We use Yammer heavily as a Q&A tool, as a forum and community discussion board, to ask frequently asked questions, to publish best responses, as a knowledge repository, because we can reach the entire organization with it. And so if I can bring the trainings in on top of that, it's just going to add extra value. But if I can do it like this, it significantly shortens my workflow, so I can concentrate on the content and delivery. And like you said, after delivering a 3-hour class, we're wiped out, especially in an online
Yeah.
environment. So this can definitely help with um, saving my voice a little bit and saving, whatever cognitive abilities I have left after that 3-hour brain dump, and focusing in on,
Hmm.
critical work. So there's a ton of advantages. There's a few things I'd like to see, some things I'd like to see them kind of update. I know we're going to talk about some of that as we get ready, toward the end of the session today. But
Yeah.
with that, why don't we move on into the next part?
Yeah. So I think to talk about the what's coming before we, dive into like my actual OBS and to show you that demo to end things out. Let me share my screen here. A good resource for what's coming in Office 365 is always the roadmap. So this is roadmap.microsoft.com, and they've added a lot of really great filters to the roadmap. So we can search for like the word event and then go in here to the product, and I can specify specifically Yammer. So we want to filter by Yammer, and then I'll leave everything else as is, but you could even do like, I want to know DoD versus GCC versus commercial. But yeah, there's 41 things for Yammer. Let's filter by like commercial. That drops it down to 40. Then you can like specify the platform and all of that. But we've got a few things like if we go to in development or rolling out, let's filter by rolling out. There's official communities in Yammer that's rolling out right now. That's not specifically about Yammer live events. So we'll take that away and we'll sort by what's in development. So a few things that are marked as in development right now. One of this is sending the live event as a calendar invite. Right now, they've marked that as March. So that was what me and Phil mentioned also in the chat. We saw it for a couple months there. I made a video about it even, and then it went away. So it is still coming. There is a feature ID for it, but it's coming now in March 2022 is when we can hopefully expect that. As we scroll down a little bit more, see, I'm not seeing like these aren't about specific events. This one is about events though. So Yammer Teams and Microsoft Stream, everything is going to be powered by Microsoft Teams in the near future. So this is it previewed like a year ago, and actually I had it, but then I lost it again. But I have noticed that you can do a Teams RTMP event, which I believe is externally accessible. Whenever I tried it out, whenever it was in like preview for Megan Bowen once. So that's a benefit, is like it's not just internal. The Teams based one will be external. but that's supposedly rolling out sometime this month. So hopefully we'll see that move to another dot right here, and we'll get it soon. But that's just to note that no matter what, the back end is moving away from Microsoft Stream and Azure Media Services over to Teams, handling all of the external encoding for your live events. Um, and then I think that's about it for specific live event features. Everything else is kind of not really about live events specifically, but the Teams encoding, and then the calendar invites. I want to say there was one other one that I'm looking forward to, which Teams Q&A. It was on the roadmap, but it disappeared. It was the ability to have a moderated Q&A inside of Yammer. That was on the roadmap. It looks like it's not anymore. But it would be nice if, like right now, Q&A is just wide open. Anybody in the community can ask a question. It'd be nice if there was like kind of a holding area, while your live event is live, so that you could kind of moderate that and, publish the questions you want to publish if you're in like a town hall or something. So, but that kind of covers what's new and next. Did you have something you wanted to share, Andy,
Just some of the
on
since
your
we're
screen?
talking about like some of the what's new and next. I just wanted to
Hmm.
mention some of the requirements that are necessary for this. So if you're joining in on YouTube, I put this in the chat on YouTube. So this is the link to this document is out there. It's live events in Yammer, and it was updated fairly recently into December, but it just talks about some of the limits and some of the setup that's going to be involved. So there's a couple of high level messages at the top to be mindful of. Event support for up to 20,000 attendees was extended through December 31st of 2021. 50 events concurrently, as we talked a little bit earlier, and then an individual event can run for 16 hours. That's the duration. And then there's the Microsoft 365 Live Events Assistance Program, which can help with some of the larger events, up to 100,000 attendees. In our scenarios, we're talking about maybe a few hundred. Some of the things that we're doing, but this does work way beyond the scope of what we're setting up. But just a couple of things that I wanted to point out around this, and it's some of the requirements for the live event attendees. So basically, everyone who attends a Yammer live event needs to have either a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 plan that has a license for Yammer. And then only members of your Yammer network can actually attend those events. That presents some challenges for some organizations, especially organizations that are in the process of like merging with other organizations, and they might have two or three Microsoft tenants. That's a situation that involved in right now. We have some tenants that are in the process of finalizing some migration, but then we have some that are in the process of just getting started, and so they're considered external to our tenant. And so we've got some challenges there if we were going to try to meet them with this tool versus like if we do it from the Teams meeting perspective, we can invite them as a guest essentially into that meeting. So that's just something to be mindful of. Guests and external users are not necessarily going to have access to the live events. And then a couple other things that I just to kind of point out, the producing part of it, as John showed, like it's pretty easy to set up and then go ahead and deliver. But if you're the organizer and a presenter, you're going to be juggling a couple of different roles because you're going to have to kick off the meeting. You're going to have to queue up your content. You're going to have to send it live, present, and then you need to be kind of, monitoring that off to the side. So you might have to use a couple of monitors in order to do that. Another thing that we found with the live events that was challenging in my organization was the network and group requirements. So to host a live event in Yammer, you have to enforce the Office 365 identity in your Yammer administration. So that's you got to get a Yammer admin to go and activate that. And then the other thing that's we're finding challenging is that The event must be held in either a public Yammer Microsoft 365 connected group or a private Yammer Microsoft 365 connected group. So that means you
Hmm.
have to use the Microsoft 365 groups with Yammer in order to take advantage of this feature. We currently don't have this turned on, so this is going to be something that we're going to have to go through with our governance and our security and determine if it's something that is going to be viable for us in the long term. So that was something that I found testing in the organization. That was a limitation. Testing in my private environment, that's already turned on, so there was no problem actually kicking that off. But that is a requirement, so just be aware of those two network and group requirements in order to start testing this out and see if it's going to work for you.
Yeah, those are really good points. Those are things that I didn't run into because yeah, from the very beginning we always did 365 connected groups, and then now we're in native mode for all of our Yammer community. But yeah, you definitely want to keep that in mind. If it's not working for you, then definitely check out that limitations and requirements document from Microsoft because there's
Yeah.
probably something in there that it's running into.
And this one links to like three other documents and some other things to be aware of. But I put it
Hmm.
in the YouTube chat window. I'll put it in the LinkedIn comments as well, just to
Yeah.
make sure it's out there. And there's an FAQ. You'll see that along the left hand side there. The FAQ option. Make sure you follow up on that. And then there's a couple other things
Hmm.
like such as organizing a live event, producing it from your device, and getting help producing with it. So there's some definite content out there to go back and review.
Yeah. So, with the last like about 10 minutes or so, should we switch over to Simu-Live demo
Yeah,
and
I
kind of
think
how we do
so.
that?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Let
really
me
excited for this. This is a lot of
throw
fun.
that on screen here. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I kind of showed a little bit of uh, how I do live events or like what it looked like on the back end, or on like what the audience sees. And this has been developed over like a long time of like tweaking these OBS settings and everything. And so I wanted to do just like a run through of like a run of show of how I do one of these Simu-Live events. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, uh, what I want is I want to have a way to teach Office 365 classes that is consistent, that doesn't like totally drain me physically and mentally by teaching, for hours in a day. Cause I also have meetings like all after that. Um, and we were having trouble with like, hurrying through the class or forgetting something that we mentioned in another class. So what we've done is we teach a class a couple times actually live whenever we're developing a new 365 course. We call them Mastering Office 365 is the name of the series. And then we have OneDrive basics, modern meeting basics, SharePoint basics, things like that. And we'll develop a class with um, the PowerPoint slides and get it all ready to go. And we'll teach it fully live about 2 or 3 times to kind of get the flow and like what we want to tweak about the class and kind of get it dialed in. And then once it's dialed in, what we'll do is we take we take some time and we go on campus with a bunch of video equipment and we record ourselves so that it's not just a recording of a Teams meeting and the compression that happens with that. We have good microphones and good cameras and stuff all set up. We teach it all the way through. We edit the class and then we make that class available on demand so people can watch it from our SharePoint page, on their own time. And we realized we could use that as an asset but also add a live element to it. So as a Simu-Live class, we have modules like this OneDrive class. There's 3 modules in it, and so we'll play back module number 1, then we'll go to live Q&A, play module number 2, live Q&A and demos, module number 3, and then we'll end it out. And the whole time, I'm able to like do stuff in the background. And the way that I've built this out in OBS, I do external encoding because I want the customization that's available to me with OBS. And then, yeah, I use OBS Studio with some plugins and cool stuff like that. But the rundown of my scenes that I use, I always start out all of my live events with a starting soon screen. It's kind of the pre-show. I've got some, I call it Muzak. I've got some stream beats. This is stream beats by Harris Heller playing in the background. It's kind of like a chip tunes, like 90s video game theme, because I'm going with like a 90s like layout that I built in Canva. And I've just got that playing in the background. I've got it counting down to the time where we're going to go live, which is at the top of the hour. And then up here at the top, I'll show you my desk camera. I set this up 2 days ago, Andy. Let me go to the desk cam. I've got a wireless camera attached to my wall over there that kind of shows like my desk layout, because I get so many questions about like, how is your stuff laid out, so I can show like where my things are live on camera. But I thought that's kind of a nice like, okay, John's here, he's getting ready, he's doing whatever while the countdown's going. And then whenever we go live at the end of the countdown timer, I switch to this camera scene. And I'm going to go ahead and start the virtual camera. So you see the captions. And this is just a layout that I built in Canva. It's a graphic overlay, a PNG file, where I've got my camera in the middle. I've got my microphone is the only audio source, which is this microphone right here, the Shure MV7. Looking at the Sony A6400. And this is where I go live and hey, everybody, welcome to my class. This is how Simu-Live works. We're going to do a recorded session, then Q&A, then back to recorded, then back to Q&A. And I kind of explain how this is going to go. And you see all this text on screen that's rolling. This is a plugin from OBS called the Live Captions plugin that I downloaded, that it uses the Google Captioning API to recognize what I'm saying and then put that text on screen. One limitation when it comes to Microsoft Stream is if you want live captions in Microsoft Stream, they do what's called 708 captions. There's 608 and there's 708. Stream uses 708, which is the newer digital, version of doing it. But this captioning service, it can send native captions over RTMP, but they're 608 captions. So I've got like a compatibility issue. So while I figure that out, what I'm doing instead to make this the most accessible as possible is I've put the caption windows on top of these scenes so that I'm kind of forcing live captions onto screen to help our folks who need that for, for their hearing needs. If they need captions, I don't want them to not be able to attend the live event. So if you want more info about this captioning thing, I can make a video about that. Just let me know in the chat if you want to hear more about how I'm putting captions on screen. But then I also show them like, hey, one benefit of watching live is we're going to do a live Q&A. And so I can show your comments on screen. The way that I actually am doing this is, let me hide the Yammer comments overlay. So this is just a graphic inside of Canva. And what I've got is side by side, I have my camera, and then I've got a screen capture, and I'm capturing a window inside of on my computer. So over here, this is the progressive web app for Yammer, and that's available to me as a window that I can select in OBS. So if I pull this back over here, what I've done is I have the Yammer window. If I open that up, I've selected this window visible on my computer over on my other screen. And then I've cropped it down so that it fits inside of this little preview window here. And see, since I moved it, I'll have to grab this and kind of pull it down a little bit. There we go. And then that way, like, it's kind of like contained inside of this little like 90s looking UI window. And I can show people like, oh, Sarah asked this question. That's a great question, Sarah. Let me answer that for you. And I'm showing the question next to me, and that's burned into the recording so that everybody benefits no matter when they watch this particular video. So that's how I'm showing comments on screen. And then when I want to do a demo or show some slides, that brings me over to this layout, which is I'm taking up the top corner of the screen with a display capture. It's my MacBook display that you guys are looking at. So that's why there's like a hall of mirrors effect. but I've got that with my video next to it. I put myself on the other side because when I'm looking at this screen, my head is tilted a certain way. I want to look like I'm looking at my monitor. So that's kind of important when you're laying out your OBS scenes. You want to be aware of like where your gaze is. Right now, when I'm looking ahead, I have you guys on a teleprompter right now so that I'm looking through the teleprompter into the camera lens. But when I'm looking at my screen, I want it to look like I'm glancing that direction instead of looking off the other direction. Just those little things are really handy to have. So as I go back and forth, I'll kind of say, hey, everybody, here's how we're going to do it. Then I click on module number 1, and all that does is it just plays back the thing, which I can hear it in my ears right now, so it's super distracting. But it's playing back that, I guess, what is it, 26 minutes, playing back that 26-minute recording. And then at the end of that video, if I scroll to the end, it goes to the end, and then I go back to comments and say, okay, so here's some comments that we've got. Let's talk about this. I wrote down some demo ideas, and I kind of do like live event flow between the comment feed and the live screen doing demos. And then whenever I run out of questions, I go to module number 2, and now we're going to watch module number 2. That's about 15, 20 minutes where I'm off screen doing my email and other stuff. I'm always listening in my headphones though, so that you don't miss the end of the video and there's just a blank screen. So the video ends, and then I go back again, back to comments. Hey, does anybody have any new questions that we want to answer? And then, as you guessed, I would go to module number 3. That ends up playing. Then I go back to the comments. When I run out of comments, then what I go to is I go back to the camera feed. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate you taking our survey so we can make our classes better. I kind of do like a little bit of an outro, and then I go here to post show, and it's thanks for watching. It's that same music track from the beginning. So it's the same style of music, the beginning and the end. And that's the end of it. The only other thing that I would add is inside of OBS, I always have a BRB screen so that if my 3-year-old starts screaming because my wife is outside, I can go to "We'll be right back," and I've got no microphone. I'm just playing music, and it says "We'll be right back," and then I can just come back on screen and, hey, sorry about that. I had a big coughing fit. So that's basically my layout for how I do Simu-Live classes, where I'm going between a pre-recorded video back to a live screen, back to a pre-recorded video, and showing comments on screen. I think that's probably the most crucial, is if you can figure out how to show your Yammer comments on screen, it'll up your engagement a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So any questions about that coming in here?
You want to switch over to mine?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So,
There you go.
John and I have been, going back and forth with like these things for the last couple of years. And, as John mentioned, like we build this up slowly over time. And like I showed a little bit of mine earlier. I'm just showing you the output of mine right now. And I've actually been showing it for a while. Like the last couple of things that I shared on the screen, this was all through my OBS and just feeding it into Restream here. But much like John, I've got a nice welcome screen, to set up the stage for, the event and let people know the start time and like what we're going to do, animation, motion, and audio, that things are getting ready to get started. And then I have a series of screens that are very similar that allow me to do similar things. Now, I do this for virtual trainings, but I've also done this for in-person workshops. I did do a couple of in-person workshops last year. And so I tried to take what I've learned about doing remote learning and put that in a workshop scenario to add value to the people that are in the room, the people that are in the back, and make it more accessible and so forth. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that I've done beyond this. So we've got the nice welcome screen. Hey, this is what we're gonna be doing. And so we've got like a main screen, and the main screen is typically just like here I am. This is Andy, and I start to broadcast. But I've done another main screen, and this one's really cool. This one has a lower third built into it, and displays my name and any other information that I want to broadcast inside of there. And I've got it set up to automatically trigger. So as I move into one screen or another, I can automatically have that that lower third. Another one that I've done that I get some inspiration from some Twitch streamers around this is here I am this is the content that we're going to talk about. So this is the content that's like actually queued up that we're going to be talking about here in just a couple of minutes. And then if I want to, I can trigger the lower third again on that, just so name and, here's, maybe a link for information. In this case, like I'm doing a YouTube scenario, follow me on YouTube. But
Mhm.
with the content queued up, I could go into a screen where I just have the content. And so like I'm kind of overlaid on the content and there's the content. And
Mhm.
this one's a little heavy-handed with a border, but it just shows you some of the capabilities. Most of the time, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch over from like maybe this screen where I've got, the lower third running. I'm going to switch over to where I'm going to be presenting content. And so like what I do in that situation is kind of like the almost the newscaster or screencast view. So I put me in the lower corner and then I've got the content there. And John taught me about the captions tool. So I've actually worked that into my scene
Mhm.
so that you get the captions down at the bottom. And that helps with things like accessibility and people being able to read, especially like if we're in a hybrid scenario or in-person scenario as well as online. And then if I need to, like I can put in logos for whatever event that I'm going to be working in. I set this up though so that I have the ability to actually move myself from side to side. So I can appear on one side of the
Mhm.
screen or I can appear on the other, depending on like what kind of content that I'm working with. And if I need to focus in on just the content, I can drive down into that. Also, I do a break time screen. Showed this one a little bit earlier. Just we're on break, we're back. Here's a little bit of motion. Here's
Mhm.
a countdown timer around that, and then also going with the simulated live type event. I've got one which allows me to preload and queue up a video.
Mhm.
And so it just walks through the video and it even does the live captioning on top of that if I need it.
Mhm. Yeah, because the captioning software, the plugin, you can assign it to a specific microphone, or you can assign it to the entire stream audio.
System.
So what Andy's doing, and he's got the whole audio channel for his captions. So even a video is going to be captioned as well.
Yep. And I'll let me switch up my sharing real quick. Let me go
Hmm.
back to just gonna switch the window. I put it all together through OBS. My OBS is a little
Hmm.
bit more complicated than
Yeah,
John's.
holy cow.
So on the left hand side there in the upper left hand corner, that's actually the lower thirds tool. That's a plugin that you can get from the OBS forums. It's pretty easy to install. It's really easy for Windows. It's a little trickier for Mac, which is what I'm on. But I got that installed. I've got all my scenes down at the bottom, and I have specific scenes for different scenarios. So like my PowerPoint scenes um, and um, and whatnot. I've got my
Hmm.
controls in the center. I'm always monitoring the stats. I just kind of like to know if I'm missing frames. I've got the captions tool like John has. I've got my transitions tool built into it, and then I've got additional controls up there. So I'm just maximizing the real estate. And then, like John said, speak to the camera. So I usually position this so that I'm speaking to the OBS screen, which is right below my camera. And then you
Hmm.
got a couple of different methods to broadcast it. You can broadcast it with a projector, or you can do the virtual cam. In the Teams world, I tend to do the projector because the virtual cam comes in as a cam feed and it kind of crops in from the side, which is not always great. So I do try to use the projector feed and share that as a window inside of whatever I'm broadcasting through, and broadcast that way. But the ability to include the playing of a video, whether you're feeding the video directly into a scene and then having that trigger whenever you switch over to that scene, or use the VLC media player and have videos queued up in a playlist and take the output of that and bring it into OBS, has really been great
Hmm.
for doing simulated live training where you can pre-record it, you can be there, you can moderate it, you can do the Q&A, you can queue up content, you can troubleshoot, but you maximize your ability to re-deliver content. And then each delivery, you can tweak and modify that video or that content and deliver it the next time. This has been a game changer, and learning this has really helped a lot. So in kind of closing and wrapping this up, this is the thing that I add to the end after I've gone through whatever method that I want to learn to deliver it, whether it's a Teams meeting or a customized team webinar or an out-of-the-box webinar, or hopefully here in the near future, moving into Yammer Live events. I'm going to be doing an externally encoded event so that I can take advantage of all the work that I put into a tool like OBS.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot of rearranging of OBS inside of yours. It's definitely not what OBS looks like out of the box, but
No.
that's why I really like OBS Studios. Like, it's so customizable and you can just add so much to it to get exactly what you need out of it.
Yeah.
That is really handy. Let's look at the chat here, see if there's any questions that we missed. There's one at the end here that was, do you have recommendations on adding lots of remote guests? So they use Teams NDI, which that would kind of be my default, recommendation is Teams NDI. And this is something that we struggle with internally, in my opinion, is that people tend to want to add way too many presenters and having way too many, like, oh, we're going to do a town hall, but we're going to have 16 presenters. It's like, bro, nobody wants to listen to 16 different people say a bunch of corporate nonsense. Like, I always would prefer if we would like minimize the number of presenters. But, that being said, I'm not in charge of anything, actually. So I know that people want to try to shove as many presenters as possible. Teams NDI, I can't remember what the limit is on it. Do you know if there's a limit on it, Andy? Like maybe like 9 or something? Or I think we've done like 15 in a test before, but you can do it. Things kind of start to go haywire the more and more people you add, because NDI is using more and more bandwidth on your local network, the more video feeds you're slinging around. So, you could use Teams NDI. It's gotten better because now you have isolated audio feeds. So everybody has their own audio. So you can add a compressor to somebody specifically, or you can control their level compared to somebody else's level. But you're probably going to still end up with like sync issues and like delayed video and stuff like that, the more and more that you just kind of pile in. One thing that helps with Teams NDI is I've seen our production team use the what's it called? The active speaker. That's what it's called. It's the active speaker variable, so that it automatically switches between who's talking. So you might try that. The other things that I've used personally is I've used Ecamm Live, their interview mode. You can only have, I think, up to 4 guests, 3 or 4 guests. So that's probably out. OBS Ninja, or now it's called VDO.Ninja. You might check into that because that's like a local peer-to-peer video sharing. And then what Andy and I are using today is Restream Studio. That has remote functionality, and I can have up to 10 guests here. I think Restream is the same, or StreamYard is about the same. It's like 8 or 10 guests. So hopefully that gives you a couple of options out there. And I don't see any other questions on here. All the stuff that we had highlighted, we've already answered. So, Andy, I know you've got to get out of here pretty soon, and I'm getting super hungry and need to eat some lunch and rest my sore throat. So
hope you feel better.
Thanks. Yeah, hopefully the weekend I'll get to relax. Although Chiefs are playing, man. Chiefs versus the Bengals. I was screaming a whole lot last Sunday night. that last minute, or the last real like 3 minutes of the game, best football game I've ever watched. Holy cow.
Yeah, that was incredible.
It was insane. So maybe it'll be a little bit more calm. I feel like we already had our Super Bowl. There's no way it's going to be more exciting than that. But yeah, hopefully I can get some rest, and hopefully you stay well. Good luck with your meeting and all your preschool decisions and everything that you got coming up.
Here's hoping.
But yeah, but thank you everybody who's watching, folks that have stuck around. I think there's 7 people on right now. There's 4 on LinkedIn. So over time we've lost some folks. This was a long live stream, 2 hours and 10 minutes, but really appreciate it. The chat was awesome. We had a lot of fun interacting with you guys through the chat. And let us know in the chat also, what do you want to talk about next? Like, we're looking for topics in the future, and would always love to hear ideas from the community. So
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, thanks everybody. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
we'll see you next time. Bye.